Hi, Mike Kennedy with you. This is a Minox B sub-miniature camera made in Germany. It has extremely small film. Instead of film like a 35 millimeter camera, has a frame that's 24 by 36 millimeters. This camera has only 8 by 11 area for a negative, so the film is very small. Now, the idea behind this was every man's camera. In other words, you could always have this with you, stick it in a pocket, pull it out whenever you need it, and take a photo. These were actually used, particularly this model, it seems, by spies. In other words, you got into a location and you got access to some documents, and then you copied them with this, and then you put the documents back. It even has this chain, has this bump on it, right? Another one, and another one. Those are focusing distances. So if you're trying to do some copying, you can have this, or it could be close-ups of a flower or something too. You would know that this distance here was how far you would want to be for one of the distances on the Minox. And this focused so that basically just about everything from, I forget what, 6 feet to infinity or 3 feet to infinity, I'll have to look that up, would be in focus. Oh, here I can just turn it here to find out that information. Perhaps. I haven't used this for a long time, but I wanted to show some of the accessories with it. But, spies were actually issued this. American spies, Russian spies, and it had a selenium meter, which almost always doesn't work well now if you have one of these, because the cells wear out. Now, you can get these repaired still, and you can get that cell replaced, but you're going to have to do a little math when you get a reading from it, because it's not going to match the original thing that was in here. And so you could take high contrast document film and copy something. You probably needed a light with you. It's funny, I watched some, supposedly documentary that was showing something about spies doing this, and they had to carry a big, they had a camera like this, and they had to have a big light bulb, because there's no way they could go take a picture with it in a semi-dark room and get a really accurate thing, because this film was high contrast, really high resolution, but really needed a lot of light. So they'd be carrying around a light bulb with us, which I think is kind of funny because it's so much bigger than the camera itself. Now, what's happened, this company's out of business. I guess technically maybe they still are, because they have binoculars. There's some things being sold with a Minox name, but the company basically, as these cameras became more expensive, their last model, that was, electronically shutter controlled and all this other stuff, I believe was over $1,200. And so facing that for cost, and then, we have digital creeping in, but Minox disappeared. For a while, they were branding Acmo cameras with the name Minox and selling them. And they were fairly inexpensive cameras that only had one shutter speed, and some of them focused, some of them didn't. But so they sold some of those for a while, but basically the company died. But they would manufacture film, they would develop film and print it. You would put it in an envelope, send it to them, and now, my goodness, now just about if you shoot a frame, it's going to cost $1 or so per image. So if you've got a 36 exposure roll in it, you could be looking at $40 to $50 to have that developed and printed. That's why a lot of people who do this do it on their own. Now, I mentioned the fact that the company no longer exists. So people have to slit their own film. In other words, in the dark, you have this little device, and it has some like razor blades in it, and you draw 35 millimeter film through, and it cuts a number of passes out of that film. And then there's a special cassette that fits this, and it will be wound in that, taped together, and then you can load the film in and out in light. Those cartridges, because they got broken when they're processed by most places, there are very few of those around. But what's happened now, this is true with 110 too, now that we have 3D printers, you can 3D print a cartridge that will work in this. And the 110's easier because it's so much bigger. That's like is that a 17 by 23 millimeter frame? I'll have to look that up because I don't remember that right now. But this had shutter speeds from bulb, which is just open all the time, and let's just T, but eighth of a second, yeah, up to 1,000th of a second. And the thing that was interesting about this too is the F number doesn't change. In other words, this lens is stopped down to an optimal F number for the design of this lens. And so what you would do is just vary the shutter speed and the focusing distance. And it was like f3.5, I believe, and that would work for everything. Now, with the advent of, it's kind of funny, as digital started ramping up, the film quality took an enormous jump upwards. We had these different color negative films, black and white films, and all these films, and the technology just like took off. Well, what's going to happen is in sales, this is going to happen. Film is going to drop to nothing, and digital, even though at the beginning it produced very inferior quality photos, it was so much easier that people went to that. But the fact that the film got so much better meant that you can get some really hard to believe quality prints out of this. We have the Kodak Ektar films and the document films I mentioned before. You can buy these slit for you too if you don't want to go to the trouble of slitting it yourself. But really high contrast film. But people figured out how to take that film and have a special developer that it would bring it back down to a more natural contrast range. So you could take pictures of scenes and everything and blow them up to 8 by 10 and not see grain. 8 by 10 inches. Excuse me. So there's a little of the background. And then they had different models after this. So this is kind of the mid one. And like I say, it had a particularly good lens. It advances film by taking the camera out. You would take a picture, and then it would advance the film to the next one. So you would be ready again. So you'd be push-pulling this. Now, the later versions, you didn't have to do that. You would still open it up, but it wouldn't. The film would be right. You wouldn't have to go in there and go back and forth, back and forth. But it was a simplicity in design. They had these without the exposure meter, some of the other models, earlier models. So we're going to look at two accessories here. Okay, we talked about how tiny the negatives are, right? Well, this is Minox's solution to it. Or you get your negatives back, and you have a negative viewer. With this, you could put the film in this gate here, look through, and you would see a frame. Let's see, I don't know if this is even possible, but yeah, there you go. You could see the square there, the rectangle, and below it there's a little rounded rectangle. That would show you the frame and the frame number. Minox film originally had film numbers on it. So you had this roll of they made rolls up to 50 frames long. And you could look at this and then you'd say, oh yeah, it's frame 29 that I want to either take to my darkroom or send back and have a print made. Now, of course, Minox is gone now. They don't do that. There's no one that puts numbers on the frame, because when you slit it, it's just problematical to somehow. It was printed on with light. So in other words, in the making of the film, it would actually go through a machine that would hit it with a light that would say 1, 2, 3, 4, over the length of the thing, so you could find the right frame number. But they were so small, so this is really a handy gadget. And it's funny, I got this one, I got at Goodwill, and they stuck a big sticker on it, which is too bad, because it's like the box is almost worth more than the thing that's in it, because people like to have the original boxes. So, and then I was somewhere else, and well, no, this is there also. And I heard about a right angle finder. Now, I'm thinking, there was a company called Spiritone, and they made this right angle thing to take pictures with, and basically it looked like a lens hood, but it had a mirror in it, and it had a cutout on it. So you could be pointing the camera this way, and it would really be taking a picture 90 degrees this way or 90 degrees that way, and up and down, I suppose, depending on how you had that set. So the idea was to allow you to take a picture of something or someone without them being aware of it. So they were, but that runs into some problems, because a normal mirror, if you don't realize that, you're actually looking at two images. You're seeing the image from the silvered back, and there's a lighter image superimposed on it from the surface of the glass itself. So to make a quality mirror for anything to do with photography, it has to be first surface. So that means the glass, instead of silver glass, it's glass silver. So you actually will bounce off that, and you'll only get this one image, because it's, it's opaque, so it's not going to see anywhere else. So I thought, boy, that would be crazy to do that with this. It'd be so hard to do and everything. And of course, I had it backwards. So this, rather than do what I said, they did something different. It wasn't the lens that the finder went on. It was the viewfinder, not the lens. So you take this and slide it over, and then you can see there's nothing over the lens, but I can now, if I do this right, yeah. I can now look through and see at a right angle. And I did that wrong. For accuracy purposes, this actually had the instruction sheet with it, which was nice. I was holding that wrong. So it does go on this way. You can see the cutout for the selenium cell for the light meter. So what you would do is you would look into this mirror here. Let's see if we can get it so you see some kind, you can see something through there, right? Well, the idea is you could hold your camera like this and frame it accurately, then take a picture, but you're not taking a picture 90 degrees this way, you're taking a picture 90 degrees that way. So you're going from maybe using it like this, pointing it at someone, to maybe doing this, which is, a person, if you're facing the other way, would normally think that you were taking a picture that direction. And it being so small and everything, I think that would work. So there you go. It actually allows you to look in the finder at a 90-degree angle so that you can take a picture that way instead. There were other accessories made for this, which I don't have. They have a, you can get these accessories, and depending on the condition of them, and like I say, the condition of if they have the instruction sheet and they have a good box, these are really shop-borne, they would call it, stickered, that, those would cost more. But if you were just trying to get something really functional, you could go without, you know, if you're a collector, you'd want them in boxes. If you weren't, you're just a user, you wouldn't be as concerned with that. But there's a binocular attachment. So you have your binoculars, and then there's this little device to hold it for the other thing. So you make sure the two eye things are focused at the same point, and you would actually, you know, zoom in on what you want to take a picture of, and then you would snap it, and it would actually be photographing through the binoculars. So, and then they had a tripod, a small tripod for it, so that you could do your, you know, document copying, you know, and everything. And also they had an enlarger too. Enlarger just built by Minox with a really high quality enlarging lens, because again, you're going from 8 by 11 is really small, and so it's so small. Yeah, this is the f3.5, and it's oh my goodness, I can almost see that. I'll put it below what millimeter. It looks like it says 18, but or 10. I can't read that. But you had this tripod for the document copying type things or anything else you were going to do. You had the attachment to go on the binoculars, which I could see that would be kind of a hoot to have. And I think to some degree the fact that the format is so small helped it work better than with binoculars than, say, you stick a 35 millimeter camera in front of a binoculars or a you know, a digital SLR, and you're going to have problems because the lens is so big and different things. I think that kind of this worked a little better, and the quality expectations weren't terribly high with those types of setups. But there we go. Minox B. We've got something to pick out which negative we want to print, and we can take pictures at right angles so people don't know what we're doing. We can be spies ourselves. Bye.